Talked about the BMW and J.J. Leto starting last in the field. We'll ride on board with him as he tries to cut through traffic and catch his teammate in the Porsches for the GT class win.
What he's seeing. Now that's the Porsche following. This is an incredibly fast car. Watch this coming off the corner. Little smoke right there. Hopefully that ends in engine smoke, maybe just brake smoke. He's exiting down now. He's heading down towards Melbourne here, I believe. Yep. You're going to see him go over the crest of a little hill. Now he's steeply downhill. See the Porsche close up under braking, turning in. Watch the G-force on the bottom. You can see over 1 and the acceleration 80, 90, 100. Very quick car. There's JJ at work. The thing is that they just simply have to make more pit stops because they have to feed the horses.
Let's talk about, when we talked about the point graphic earlier, why the factory BMW drivers weren't there. Because they're developing a new car.
Yeah. Lucas Luhr and Sasha Masson in the 23 car as they line up in the field here today. Today we've got a couple of rides in the BMWs, Bill Auberlen and Nick Johnson in the 10. That's one of the factory BMWs. Actually, Tom Milner's prototype group. The 43 machine, that's the other factory BMW, Dirk Mueller and Frederick Ekblom, and they line up in 12th spot today. And they will have a great run, I think, in that V8 powered machine. One of the Cadillac. Next Saturday at 3:30 Eastern Time, NASCAR returns to NBC. Coverage of the Napa Auto Care 250 from Pikes Peak. Fresh off 2 straight wins, including one last night at Gateway. Busch Series points leader Kevin Harvick hopes to keep his hot streak going in the Napa Auto Care 250. I'll be there with Dorsey Schrader for the coverage Saturday, 3:30 Eastern Time, right here on NASCAR's new home, which of course is NBC. Good to have you with us at Sears Point today. 14 seconds. Let's check in on that battle, though, for GT dominance. The 4 factory-prepared BMWs that we talked about at the top of the broadcast. Well, Bill Auberlen's at the head of the class by a good bit over Dirk Mueller and J.J. Leto. This is one of Tom Milner's PTG cars, so not a factory-run team.
Now, right now, they're winning the battle of egos between the 4 BMW cars.
As we take a look at your GT class points in the American Le Mans Series, brought to you by BMW. Sasha Masson and Lucas Luhr, Randy Popes, those are Porsche-mounted drivers. And Boris Said and Hans Stuck tied for 5th. They're a couple of the BMW pilots, and they drive for Tom Milner's Prototype Technologies team.
Excellent battles all the way through here.
Riding with Auberlen in the 10 car now. He is 11th overall and leading the GT category down the front straightaway, which, as you mentioned earlier, Bill, really isn't much of a front stretch. You kind of create an arc out of the final corner.
The whole course is just one long arc. You kind of go inside to outside edge. You're so rarely going in a straight line here, but the track is very satisfying for drivers.
Back at Sears Point Raceway in Sonoma, California, the American Le Mans Series on NBC Sports. Today, the X Factor Grand Prix of Sonoma. I'm Rick Benjamin, Bill Adam alongside. Calvin Fish, Martin Haven on pit road for us. We've had a cycle of pit stops, not quite to halfway today. And here's how things stack up right now. Emmanuel Pirro in the 2 car for the Audi team is out in front. Tom Christensen has just taken over the number 1 machine that led early from Dindo Capello. He has fallen back off of those pit stops to 2nd. David Brabham, Jan Magnussen still 3rd in their Panos machine. Andy Wallace, Johnny Herbert sit 4th in the champion Audi. The 51 is out of action with a drivetrain problem. We ride with one of the GT contenders. Wayne Taylor, Max Angelelli 5th overall in their Cadillac right now. And we'll show you the second 5 in the standings as well. John Fields' 37 car 6th, the 2 GTS Corvettes, the Celine, and then one of the 4 BMWs. We'll be back with more of the American Le Mans Series, the X Factor Grand Prix of Sonoma, after these words from our local stations.
Schnitzer team runs on Michelin tires. The PTG team runs on Yokohama tires. So those cars, as similar as they are not exactly the same. Look at this train of GT cars as they come onto the front stretch. This is an opportunity to get something done. This is an opportunity to get by Johnny Herbert. But I'll tell you, Klaus Graf not able to get before he is going to need to stop. Now we're on board with the number 10 machine. This is Bill Auberlen, who's worked his way up into the 2nd spot in GT. And let's take a look, Jeremy, at some of the telemetry from this car. Well, that yellow graph is the speed graph, and you can see it building speed up the back straightaway. Now, let's keep careful note of the speed through the S's of this GT car. They'll probably top out right around 150, about 150 miles an hour, down to a little less than 120, about 110 miles an hour through the S's there. There's the lateral G below that, about 1.6 lateral G's through the last turn, turn 9. There goes one of the Panos cars.
So I am pointing him by. I believe that is Graf. He goes rocky by. So top speed for these guys above that.
60 or so miles an hour. Now for a comparison, Jeremy, through the same sequence, let's take a look on board the vet. And that is currently being driven by Nicholas Johnson, 5th in GT. That's the car that we saw Magnussen flash by, and there's no way, I don't think he's going to make it.
Well, in reality, he should be pulling this race car off the racetrack, because this will definitely bring out a full course yellow, a little bit blind back in this part of the racetrack. It sounds like it's running, it just sounds like it's lost drive.
Well, we'll see what develops here. By the way, we want to remind you as well, unfortunately, Gary Portuler in the Saline.
They're 16th overall. Meantime, let's jump on board with J.J. Leto in the BMW, one of the Schnitzer factory cars, leading the GT competition in car number 42.
This is heading up the back straight right now. You hear him going through the gears, the whine of the straight cut gears. Very, very fast cars. And this is a good sign. The wiper is just occasionally wiping the windshield. No rain appearing right up there at all. So it looks like the local weather forecaster was correct. It's going to be a good afternoon after all.
Up the edge. Talked to Boris this morning. He said, hey, I brought the bad weather with me. That race was red flag, 4 laps short of the end due to rain. And it was raining here, of course, when he got here this morning.
I know. We have in-car looks from a host of machines. Frederick Ekblom is the 4th fastest qualifier in GT, and one of the Schnitzer BMW. Maassen on the pole with that machine. We jump inside with Frederick Ekblom in one of the Schnitzer cars. Take a look at your BMW GT class points. Maassen and Mueller at the top. Just a point keeping them from Lucas Lauren, Boris Sett, and J.J. Leto.
Yeah,
who are tied for second.
You really want a close battle for points? Well, it just doesn't get any better than that. Look at that, 3 points from the top 6. This is so competitive. In fact, look at the BMW right there. You just saw it sneaking by one of the Porsches. Now this is an excellent, excellent drafting opportunity right here.
Welcome back to Mid-Ohio. Coming up tomorrow at 2 Eastern, the WNBA playoffs continue here on NBC. Pivotal Game 2 between the Sting and the Liberty, the Eastern Conference Finals. Can Teresa Witherspoon lead the Liberty back to the WNBA Championship Series for the 4th time in 5 years? Or will Dawn Staley and our hometown Charlotte Sting force a 3rd and deciding game? The Sting and the Liberty, Game 2 of the Eastern Conference Finals tomorrow at 2 Eastern, right here on NBC. 10.2 seconds behind Bill Adam, and he's not gaining any ground on board one of the GT machines meantime.
He is, and I think this is something where Capello right now has got to start taking chances. He can no longer play a passive game. He's got to be risky.
Now we want to talk for a moment about the GT battle. The two Schnitzer factory BMW machines, 14th and 15th overall. You're on board with Dirk Mueller, and he's a little bit behind his teammate York Mueller. Let's get an update on the BMW.
There'll be team orders here unless something unforeseen happens, so we expect those guys to run in tandem, hopefully to the checkered flag.
Mueller in the 43, giving you a look. This is Dirk Mueller, 2nd in class.
These are such beautiful little cars. I mean, you look at the M3s on the street, it's everybody's dream machine. They're gorgeous, but this is just like the ultimate M3 because of this little V8 race motor in it.
And you can help me get the V8 option in mine, right, Bill?
I don't think so. I think it may be an option that you and I can't afford.
Probably so. Mueller doing a great job driving this machine.
Just gorgeous. You know, it's so disappointing, too, for the PTG team. I know Tom Miller and all his guys really had hoped to have a good run this weekend. We had talked back at Mosport again about bragging rights, that both the European and the American team, Tom Milner, they like to win. It's always good to take what is a virtually identical car and beat the competition, but also beat the other guys who are running it too. You want to prove that you've got the best team, and Milner's got to be a bit disappointed.
One of the Alex Joe machines, the 42 car, the Schnitzer BMW. Leto is the GT pole sitter today, starting 16th.
That has made the battle closer between Porsche and BMW. So much so, in fact, that Sasha Massen's Porsche was fastest in the morning warm-up and qualified 3rd. That is the race situation at the moment, but nobody will be drawn on
Mueller rides 3rd. Meantime, the car immediately in front of him, about 12 seconds in front, York Mueller in car number 42, and you can get a look there at the CGL telemetry in that race car.
Yeah, wouldn't you love a street car like I mean, that M3 that accelerates like this? I would take any M3 to start with. I mean, particularly in California. I think if God made a place for M3s, it's got to be out here around Monterey. Spectacular roads and countryside, and great sound too. Hear the straight cut gears whining.
The 42.
And the fact that it is Alex Job Racing, for BMW to be ahead so strongly, these are just phenomenally good cars.
Riding with York, 2nd in GT behind his teammate Dirk Mueller. Heading up the backside of the racetrack all alone as the laps wind down at the Monterey Sports Car Championships. We show you the category leaders. There is more to come. Next weekend, a busy schedule of NASCAR action here on NBC. The home stretch and the race for the Winston Cup Championship. But first, Saturday afternoon, 2 Eastern. Coverage from New Hampshire International Speedway, the NASCAR Busch North Series and the New Hampshire 125. Then on Sunday, 12:30 Eastern, the New Hampshire 300, presented by Stacker 2. Last time the Winston Cup stars were at Loudon. Dale Jarrett took a controversial win, bumping teammate Ricky Rudd, who won last night at Richmond. Now they look to be in contention next weekend again.
The car itself has done the minimum required distance to qualify as a finisher, but only if it takes the checkered flag. So Didier is sitting in the California sun stewing. He has one championship. They've changed the entire rear end. Everything back of the engine was changed in 45 minutes behind the wall, and they are ready to go for the final lap of the race, and they will go out in the last minute to do it.
24 hours of Le Mans. Riding with one of the BMWs, one of the Schnitzer cars, the 42. We'll be back with more of the American Le Mans Series Monterey Sports Car Championships presented by Mazda after these words from our local station.
Now will be the LM675 champion this year, so congratulations to Didier.
Renegades from Monaco. Second place car in GT, the 42, York Mueller. 10th overall. Down toward turn 5. If he is in trouble, he could lose second spot here to one of the McKenna Alex Joe Porsches. Calvin Fish, what are you hearing about this?
Well, we got a report earlier that he got contact with the team and said, I've got some kind of strange vibration in the front end. They scurried around, typical Schnitzer deal, had a big powwow, and they determined that there's probably some tire buildup, not on the tire itself, but inside the rim. Sometimes they get a lot of rubber buildup as the marbles form out on the racetrack, and they think might just put the tire out of balance, and it certainly cost him the win here today unless Dirk hits trouble. But the Porsche keeps pressuring him, and they're trying to get some points back here. But Jorg is still in a good position here today to try and move ahead with this driver championship.
Well, Calvin, I could hear something new in that he did not shift all the way from the corkscrew all the way down to that corner. I think he's in gearbox problems and that is locked in one gear.
Here's Derek Bell's old endurance partner, Hans Stuck, in one of the BMWs. Audi in the hands of Tom Christensen. He'll be partnered by Ronaldo Capello. There is Hans Stuck aboard one of the BMWs. Your old driving buddy there, Derek.
Yes, a lot of experience in that man's hands, you can say. Great driver and a great man.
We are under the yellow for a turn, well, actually a turn 12 before the green flag incident, which matched Max Anzalelli in his Cadillac. And John,
something like this happening.
Well, Calvin, you can make an argument to do it both ways. You don't want to mess with the chemistry on the team, but you know, the championship should at times take precedent. The real break here for the Corvette guys is we're under yellow, and the laps are not clicking by as quick as they would. So it is a real opportunity for this Corvette team to get that car
on board with him.
Remember the lap in the Audi before, 2.5 Gs? There we saw a peak of about 1.8, so that gives you an idea what that Audi is doing at turn 1. And remember, at the bottom of the S's, the Audi was close to 160 miles an hour as we approach turn 5. And there's actually a little lift, which is surprising, so 130 miles an hour almost. So 30 miles an hour difference at the end of the S's. Turn 6. Down a couple of gears. Stopped as well. This is on board with one of the BMWs.
These are the GT class BMWs. This is the factory assisted team from Germany. Frederick Ekblom. As we mentioned earlier, a great rivalry between them and their American-based colleagues and rivals from the PTG team.
I have to remark that they obviously didn't clean his windscreen in that stop, and that's one thing that you really like as a driver, is getting all that streaky, oily stuff off, because if it rained, which it looked like it could at any time, it becomes very, very unpleasant because the wipers do not clean oil and water off.
And that'll become especially important.
His teammate Tom Christensen, an absolutely blinding lap from Vila. On board with J.J. Leto in this beautiful BMW M3 GTR, the V8 car making well over 400 horsepower. At the bottom of the screen are Islam speed lines. Some of your comments and questions.
We actually did know that, but we just haven't had a chance to say it yet.
There's been so many things we haven't been able to get to.
Didn't seem terribly relevant so far. We haven't seen too much of it, have we?
There goes Stefan Johansson.
Well, it looks like the opinions seem to be running in favor of doing the last hour commercial-free. It's an example of the kind of action that we have seen thus far through 2 hours, 20 minutes, and counting. There you see the elapsed time. I was off by about 2.5, but what the heck. Stefan Johansson leads, Frank Biela second. We'll be back. He'll come back in. Obviously, they need to do more work on that car. On board with one of the factory BMW Motorsport M3 GTRs. They're on board, the number 42 in the hands of former Formula One driver J.J. Leto, chasing Dirk Mueller in the sister car from BMW Motorsport.
And this is the battle for the class lead. The 2 PTG cars sit in 3rd and 4th in class, 10th and 11th overall. They're about 8 seconds behind this battle, and they too are within a second on the racetrack.
Listen to how noisy it is inside those cars.
Yeah, whining transmission. It's echoing inside that metal.
Tremendous development on these GT cars this year. Not only the V8 power, and by the way, BMW has a V8 powered M3 road car here this weekend. They've been showing off down in the paddock. They are going to build a few of those, not many, and certainly not available, as I understand it, in North America, but there is one here. But so much development for these race cars this year. They're going so quick on the racetrack.
Of course, it was the building of the street version of this car that caused such an issue when it was brought out at the 12 Hours of Sebring earlier this year. The idea behind the GT category is that it is a mass, or at least commercially available street car in a racing iteration. This race, so that one of them will be able to win the championship. They didn't want to have both of their title contenders knocked out should the car let them down for some reason, and based on what we've seen thus far in the Petit Le Mans, you can see why that was a very, very smart thing to do.
The all-Mueller car.
Now, Mueller's advantage of 1 point over Leto comes from the fact that he picked up a bonus point for setting the fastest race lap at Sebring. Welcome back to the final round of the American Le Mans Series for 2001. The Petit Le Mans from Road Atlanta. You are on board with J.J. Leto, who did have the race lead in the GT category in his BMW, but moments ago he went off track. And there you see the flying fin at work.
He did pinch on James, but then, you know, the point is that you have to give the guy in front the line through the corner. Why should he pull off line and put himself in a jeopardized
position? Leto's car now. Watch the right side of your screen. See if you can see. There goes Wallace.
Yeah, I mean,
no missing that.
And the point is James Weaver is a few laps behind. He's not exactly contesting the lead, and I think it was
the fact that it did get into the tire and cut it down. But as Derek Bell said, JJ will be absolutely livid here. We'll try and catch a quick word with him. JJ, what happened? He doesn't even want to talk. He wants to look at that and see if we can get a word with him.
Well, you heard the beach lapping up against the car, but you didn't hear the contact that time.
It's just as well you couldn't hear the in-car voice from him talking to his pit crew, boy, I tell you. Yeah, would have been a few finished words thrown in there.
But you could see he was way offline, nowhere near turning in for
BMWs, and was totally on the other end of that. And you know, and it's tough for both groups of drivers. There's no question about it. But I agree with you. The Weaver is not in a position where he's fighting for a top 3 position or a championship.
Into 5th, and then turned into the cliff. That's amazing speed.
They do motor through there, I have to say. But you know, that Paynos team is really having a nice big up at the moment. You know, they've won a couple of races, and it's such a difference from when they were at Sebring. They were so down, so they are determined to finish this race.
On board here with Boris said, this is the PTG car. These boys here, the American branch of BMW, are very much in a support mode to the motorsports effort. They really want BMW and the motorsports drivers to have a realistic chance of winning the championship. And Tom Milner is quite happy.
Thanks very much. much, Dorsey. And yeah, I mean, that's part of it. That's one of the issues here. I mean, you can throw a lot of things at this track. A lot of people say if you're going to have the twist to turn like that, wider wouldn't hurt either.
Well, don't forget, there's two ways of looking at these races. You can try to sprint the whole thing, keep your fingers crossed you get away with it, win that way, or you can take a deep breath and go endurance racing where you pace yourself more. The Cadillacs were out to pace themselves and get a result. They will get a result here, there's no doubt about that. But the Audis, on the other hand, the favourites, they're obliged to try and sprint it amongst each other and make a race of it. So really, you pays your money and takes your choice. If you can afford to, you sprint it, and if you can't afford to, then you have to play the waiting game and make it into a race of attrition.
Well, the Caddies, I mean, by their own admission, are not yet on sprint pace. I mean, they're not going to go head-to-head against an Audi and be there. So that's a smart move on their part to just let the race
get all those small advantages, because remember that factory car, and we did mention it earlier on, does have the direct injection, and the big advantage is not necessarily more horsepower, but way better fuel consumption. And when you go into 10 hours of racing, better fuel consumption is an enormous advantage.
We're on board, of course, with the number 42, the involved, if you will, situation in terms of the points in the GT division. There's lots of different strategies that can unfold. Here is how they stood coming into the race. You can see Jörg Mueller, 1 point lead over J.J. Leto. They've been sharing the same car all year long. They split them because Sasha Maassen and Lucas Luhr have a shot at it. They wanted to make sure that one of their guys is going to get this championship for BMW Motorsports, and there's been lots of support roles, you mentioned, Derek, by PTG, but the point scenarios are fascinating.
Absolutely, and Greg, you mentioned this championship. It is so Audi tells them what they can and can't do, and it's a frustration, I know, to Johnny Herbert. He says they say no.
Audi definitely reigns.
Taz Harvey, Grady Willingham car for Dick Barber. Here he is on board. Look, he squeezes left. Watch his left. Door gets closed. Boom. Into him. Over.
I don't know whether it was a case of they just couldn't get slowed down, but I don't see incident here. This is the onboard. This is now, that's turn 4, and they drop down to the S.
Now look how far behind he is. So number 15 is going very, very slow. So you got to presume maybe he doesn't see you. That's exactly what happened. Never saw him until he heard the knock.
Meantime, the 43 car, the BMW, came in, and Dirk Mueller got in as Jörg Mueller gets out. Also, the 42s coming in later will stay in that car when it does get here.
Well, that, of course, going to snug things up and up front. Now, this should put Johnny Herbert and the champion machine into the lead because it was under yellow, and that stopped. Welcome back to Road Atlanta, the Petit Le Mans, after, look at that, 495 miles. Less than 5 miles away from halfway, and interestingly enough, just a couple of ticks of the clock away in the 675 class. Andy Pilgrim in 6th leads the GT, GTS, great battle in GTS, and this one goes a bit deeper into the pack. Down, looking here now, back to the 20th position. We're going to show you the full field. Stephen Earle, by the way. Welcome back to Road Atlanta, the Petit Le Mans. You're looking at another of the legends. That is Hans Stuck, and driving the BMW, and you can tell that helmet. Look at that, the stars in the helmet. Look at the speed of those shifts, and that's not paddle shift. That's not sequential. That's a patterned gate.
Straight cut gears, as all racing gearboxes are. No time for synchromesh. See his visor open. That's a lot more cool air in. Some drivers don't like that in case it may go on fire, but really you're pretty safe inside a sedan like this. But you can actually hear the whine of the gearbox here. Just listen.
Yeah, he doesn't use the clutch at all either, you see. That is actually just banging it straight through. That's why it's so quick. No clutch. His left leg isn't kind of jumping up in the air with the clutch pedal. This man loves to drive. Music, huh?
That is truly beautiful. And Hans Stuck, not really a better conductor than the bunch, I don't think.
Well, he is so enthusiastic about everything he does inside a race car. I mean, he just loves to drive. He'd do it for free if we didn't pay him.
Well, you know, one of the things, too, that while we've been enjoying watching Hans Stuck here, of course, we've got the emails that are coming in, and there's an interesting development that was officially announced here, and obviously some of our very well-informed fans back at home watching got on the email and are a little bit aware of what's going on. I have an email here from Tom Johnston from Welland, Ontario, Canada. It says, I was wondering if any cars at the Petit Le Mans event are in fact using the upcoming system of 1, 2, or 3 lights on the side of the car to indicate their class position during the race. Keep up the good work. I vote for the final hour to be commercial free, by the way. Thanks, guys. Well, interestingly, Tom, I took a moment a little bit earlier and took a look at that very program as it was introduced here. We spent some time with it. They're testing it here. It's not officially in use, but they're testing it. But right now, this seems like a perfect time. Let's take a look at the feature that I filed just a little bit ago at that new system that's going to be employed to help the fans at the track know where their drivers are in class. And as we said, it is being tested here. A couple of the BMWs and a couple of the Porsches. And if you're in Europe, it's going to cost you a cool 250,000 euros. And you do the math, that's pretty serious money.
And apparently will be available from January 2002 on.
The first one came out. That was a stretch of the rules. You take the rules and you stretch them. And of course, wasn't it the Dower 962 that got Hurley Haywood his last win was sort of an interesting read on the rules. It happens.
That's absolutely right. This is beautifully done, this car. Very nicely put together.
This is a replay. I'm sorry, Darren.
This is Carl Wendlinger. Look at this. In the brake zone, right over the edge of the gravel trap. He has been in all sorts of trouble because it was Carl Wendlinger we saw hit the number 15 Porsche earlier at the bottom of the S's.
Did you see when he was braking, the front end of that car just, I don't know whether that was lockup on the front or whether it was
You can get away with it with this type of car, though. You know, that's the beauty of this sort of car. You make an error like that, you can get away with it. It's got a bit of ground clearance. You don't go ripping off your spoilers or your bibs. So he just left his braking too late and decided to go across the shingle rather than lock it all up and turn it into a ball.
Bibs and shingles. I like that. You notice 1.5 was the lateral G that he saw in the prototype. The LMP 900s, you're seeing about 2.5. Obviously, you would expect that performance, but for a GT car to be generating that kind of lateral G's, that's some serious performance.
Running 10th overall, as you see the Johansson Lemery Audi just fly by him, but Carl Wendlinger still on board with him. 10th overall, and he is 1-2 P3 in the GT class.
Now, of course, we're watching, and Wendlinger struggling a little bit there. Dorsey, he seems to be in a bit of trouble.
Well, guys have been down here and camped in this garage area, and you see right there.
That's a steering arm with a high angularity ball joint at the end, and exactly what Dorsey said.
Welcome back to the Audi Petit Le Mans here in Speedvision's live coverage, flag to flag, for another year. Absolutely great. This is Road Atlanta. Of course, you're on board. Bill Oberlin giving you a bit of a tour in the number 6 prototype technology group, Yokohama BMW, up through turn 5, heading down toward turn 6. Happy to welcome to the, well, we're not really happy to welcome to the booth Rob Dyson, because that means that you're having a problem with the car and you've got the time to swing over and visit with us. Obviously, the car's out. We reported earlier as we believe clutch problems. What happened?
Clutch was, the clutch cluster came a little unglued. We're unclear as to what caused the problem. We're going to pull it apart when we get back to the shop in a couple of days. Take a look and see what happens. It's very unusual that you have any problems with clutches the size that we're using now with the multiple plates. I don't want to get too technical, but it just was a very, very unusual occurrence.
But you're happy with the chassis, aren't you, basically? It's turning out to be pretty good, isn't it?
The chassis is good, but it's the temperatures and the like, and if it seems to be okay that way, they'll see if they can't just head on. J.J. Lato now behind the wheel, and he's going to head out on the track. Now, interestingly, we want to take a quick moment here and look back. It has not been the best of days for the BMW Motorsports. I'll mention to you, that contact with the car with James, was there any serious damage to your car?
No, and that was the reason why we pulled the car off the track, because James was downshifting and it didn't go, and we knew that was causing it. So, James said, "Look, this could get us into some real trouble."
So because it looked like a bit of an ambitious move for someone of the experience of James to try and pull off.
He wouldn't have done it.
So he had a gearbox problem.
Right.
That put him in that predicament.
Couldn't slow it down enough.
Yeah, he didn't disconnect. He couldn't get it down, and that's what wrecked his rhythm. You know.
Well, Lato will tell them whether that BM is going to be handling or not. If Lato's happy to put up.
I spoke to Bob Riley earlier this morning, and he told me there was quite a bit of flexing on that new car that they've worked on to just make it a little bit better every time they go work on it.
Yeah, and the flexing was in places that we haven't seen it before, wheel carriers and that kind of thing. And we're working on it. It's one of these things that fortunately the good folks at Goodyear enables to use some testing facilities for them, and we were able to fix fix up a few parts and get it working.
I think what I found interesting from Bob was he said normally when something flexes, it eventually breaks. But he said nothing actually broke on this car. It was just a lot of small things flexing in a small way that had to be taken care of instead of one big thing.
Right. Again, this is what you find when you
go for it and drive round the problems and get results.
That's right. And the other thing that it does when you race the car is not only that, but you also, it can be destructive testing, but the other thing is that it also shows you the good benefits of the automobile as well.
The shout, no question. We take a look at the LMP 675 category. Milka Duno continued to lead that, teamed with Scott Maxwell, obviously, who had some great runs early. Ben Devlin second, then Hurtgen and Brian Willman round out the top four in that category. The four in there, and in the GT category, this is an interesting development. Number 43, Dirk Mueller, continues to lead it, but Hans Stuck is coming up in second to get back on that lead lap. And then with yellows or pit stops, that could involve, get very interesting. J.J. Lato, Johnny Mollem round out the top four. We're going to step away for a moment very quickly. When we come back, another special guest.
Emails. Get to some of our guests, because for 5.5 hours, I mean, it was harem scarum time. There was so much going on the racetrack, as you watch Boris said.
Look at the eyes. Look at the eyes. He's second in GT, still trying to get that lap back, but the focus, and obviously you watch, this is not any just casual drive. The hand's always pumping on the wheel. I mean, every spot on this track, you're correcting, you're working the car, but you've got to have your head into your game.
And this is one of the PTG run BMWs. Easy for you to say. Let me give you the advantage that the factory cars have. They went and did the European Le Mans Series rounds also. Tom Milner's cars didn't. If you did the European rounds, you could actually substitute one of those results for your worst results at ALMS. Therefore, the advantage at all times was going to be with the factory BMW team that we're on board here with, as opposed to what Tom Milner decided to do and not do the European races.
Here's a look at J.J. Lato, and here is what they just announced yesterday is the schedule for next year for the American Le Mans Series. Starts at Sebring with the 12-hour race. Great development, a return of sports cars to downtown Miami, and they had a real war in their hands making this happen, and they have. It's absolutely great. Now, the first weekend in May, it doesn't show it on the schedule because it's not part of the ALMS series, is the practice weekend.
Or something, no problem, but the rules state that if you touch the car, then you're out. So even if the officials would want to sort of like bend
the Formula One team, and a close friend of Jacques Villeneuve will stay in. Frederick Ekblom climbs out of the number 42 GT BMW M3 GTR. Carl Wendlinger, speaking of former Formula One drivers, climbs in.
And the problem is that pit exit is so blind, and the cars come up there. Where Andy Wallace broke that wheel, his car would be doing about 135, 138 miles an hour, something in that range. So you can't just...
GT battle as Collins gets up to speed. Onboard the number 42, coming up behind Collins in the Corvette. This is Carl Wendlinger, currently shown 13th in the overall and 5th in GT. I would imagine after that brilliant sunlight, the drivers are probably glad to see the sun go down. As you look at our Eastlam speed line over the bottom of your screen, reflecting your comments. And this just in, we have an email from a fan, Buzz Marcus, who says, tell Derek Bell that his son Justin has won the Houston Trans Am round.
I hope he's not kidding. Because I'm all excited in here, boy.
Justin picked up his first victory in the Trans Am at Laguna Seca, and we had highlights of it on Speedvision News Race Week. You could have seen Derek Bell just about fall off the top of the transporter. He was so happy.
Well, I can't quite do it in here, so I'll have to calm myself down.
Congratulations, Dad.
Yeah, if you'd like to step outside and dance around a little bit and jump, you can do that.
I feel better now.
Just don't scream on the microphone. Up through turn 5.
There goes Borcheller.
This is the second place car in GT, the number 6 PTG machine in the hands of Boris Said. Excuse me, that's Jörg Mueller in the class leading 43 right now. Word was that it was Wendlinger. It is not. Right now, Jörg Mueller is in position to pick up the GT driving championship. There's Wendlinger in the 42. That is correct. Wendlinger in the 42. Jörg Mueller in the class leader going for the driving title. Christian Menzel in one of the Alex Joe Porsches from 8th place and 2nd in class. We'll see where Oberlin winds up. Well, I'm sure they did the best they could with that windshield, but there it is.
That's all you're going to get, boy.
Well, unfortunately, in the pit lane, it doesn't become the highest priority. If the fuel is done and the tires are on and the driver's buckled in, let's go.
Let's get down to Andrew Marriott in the pit. Whoa! I had a bit of a first this weekend. In the wet warm-up this morning, or what, no, it was yesterday on a damp track, I saw Hans Schnuck go off in the wet. I've never seen that before.
Oh, well, there you go. It happens to the best.
3 there, and it really is very blind at the top of the hill, and you might feel like you are going slow enough, but the car gets very light at the top of that hill there, and there's not a lot of traction turning in.
His co-driver climbed out of the car and touched it to clean the windshield. That was a violation of the rules.
Well, Bill Oberlin has taken the lead in the class. He's now up into 8th overall. Mueller's shown 9th, but we need to get him back over the start-finish line to recycle the timing.
In the queue, easier to spot. After a flurry of yellow flags, 5 in the first 2 hours of this, what appears will be a 9-hour, 15-minute run, we have had relatively few. Aboard with Bill Oberlin in the GT class leading PTG BMW M3 GTR.
What a great result this would be for this PTG team to finish up 2001 with a win. Here's a good look at the cleanliness of the windshield. Or lack thereof.
Lack thereof, exactly.
Trouble is, it really is the material, isn't it, that the screen's made of. This, I think it's like a Lexan type material, and it just scratches so easily.
And it's just so hard, you don't have the time to properly clean it anyway. And that's the problem, is that once you're done with fueling and you move on to doing a tire change, if you elect to do so, often it's time to leave the pit lane, and as we've already discussed, the cleaning of the windshield is not necessarily the priority. Seconds of fuel in the car.
There's a Porsche just ahead of Mueller, but just ahead of the Porsche is Oberlin. Exactly.
Yeah, but how many times has that happened in motor racing? Not that many. I mean, it's a pretty in the lead of a race and you lose it 2 laps.
And it's like Andy Pilgrim. His piece of tape gets played over and over, passing.
I'd rather have his, though.
Yes, that's a better piece of tape.
In fact, where J.J. Lehto was so brokenhearted, he thought all had been lost. Mueller actually got the car back on track, salvaged 2nd place, and when it was time to go to the podium, J.J. Lehto was nowhere to be found. He offered his apologies later on. We'll be back in a moment to Road Atlanta. On board with Bill Oberlin, leader in the GT class in a PTG BMW. Has done his team and owner Tom Milner proud this weekend. It's Johnny Herbert going by in the 3rd place champion car.
You have to believe that BMW is asking the question, do we need 2 teams contesting this championship?
You would certainly think so. You would certainly think so in this budgetary conscious period that we're in. I'm sure they can't possibly see to run 2 teams next year. The series desperately needs the 2 teams because it's good to have that competition.
But what a perfect candidate as a customer car, that V8 BMW, much the same way as Porsche does with the 911s. Now that they've had a season to develop it, and it's clearly a race winner and the dominant car right now.
The last few years.
This is Bill Oberlin once again in the class leading car. And he is still hauling the mail. 3/4 of an hour. And here is Bill Oberlin bringing the number 6 across to take the GT class victory. And for BMW, the Manufacturers Championship, a team championship, and a Drivers Championship for Jörg Mueller. We're coming to the finale of the fireworks display, but the celebrations have just begun here at Road Atlanta, the 4th Petit Le Mans is now in the books. Won by Frank Biela and Emanuele Pirro for Audi.